something raced across the stars of Mars. In October 2025, a bright streak of light cut through the Martian sky, moving faster than anything ever observed on the red planet, at 60 kilometers per second, silently, precisely, and purposefully. For a few seconds, the Perseverance rover captured this in the distance before its night sky cameras shut down. Then, without warning, all orbital devices monitoring the flight of the 301st Atlas, a mysterious interstellar object, ceased to transmit data. Silence descended instantly, impossible to ignore, when the first unofficial images leaked, capturing a faint emerald light just above the horizon. The scientific world held its breath. Neither comets nor ordinary objects can move like that, and nothing should glow without traces of carbon or water vapor. Something happened in those missing frames, and no one from NASA, ESA, or even the James Webb Telescope was prepared to explain it. What the following images revealed would change everything we thought about interstellar visitors. It all started with an astronomy enthusiast, Stephen Burns, who posted a 9-minute video compiled from the public archive of Perseverance images. A faint trace cuts through the Martian sky, moving at 60 kilometers per second, faster than any known meteor or artifact. The position matched the predicted path of the 301st Atlas during its closest approach. For several hours, the video went viral. Analysts from around the world rushed to verify or debunk it, assembling frames, checking timestamps, and comparing star catalogs. Some confirmed the trace, others dismissed it as noise, but one anomaly kept appearing over and over. A faint green flash was recorded exactly at midnight Coordinated Universal Time, too bright, too clear, and too synchronized to be a glitch. The debates descended into chaos. Was it a chemical release, a cosmic ray, or something that Perseverance caught only for a moment? Something that moved intentionally through the Martian night? As speculation grew, one question echoed through observatories and control rooms. If this is indeed the 300th Atlas, why did all official data channels fall silent at that very moment? Usually, data from Mars orbiters fills public archives within days. This time, nothing has arrived. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the Gas Trace Orbiter, and Mars Express all confirmed they observed the flyby. But they have all gone completely silent. No raw images, no preliminary calibration files, no telemetry, only vague statements about ongoing data verification. At JPL, the image processing teams worked under close scrutiny. For a target moving at interstellar speeds, even a pixel's error could create false fragments or ghostly streams. Every image had to be checked manually, every cosmic ray strike recorded. But the real reason for the delay was even stranger. Several memorandums soon demonstrated that numerous instruments had detected objects near Tri-Eye Atlas, seemingly moving in perfect synchronization, small dim satellites following it in a tight formation. The movement was not random. The geometry was precise. Some engineers referred to them as fields of debris. Others whispered another word: probes. And while the accumulation of data from Mars continued to deepen, the only telescope still observing was the James Webb, waiting for the moment when the interstellar visitor would emerge from the shadow of Mars. When the partial spectral data finally reached Earth, it only deepened the mystery instead of solving it. Usually, the green glow of a comet is a sign of dicarbon, C2 molecules excited by sunlight. But the spectral imprint obtained from the Martian orbiters told a different story. Dicarbona was not detected. Instead, the data showed abnormally high levels of carbon dioxide, nickel, and cyanogen, a chemical mixture that no comet in our solar system has ever demonstrated. The relationship between nickel and iron turned out to be even more confusing, with nickel dominating by an order of magnitude. Planetary chemists tried to fit this data into existing models but failed. Some suggested exotic zones of formation in interstellar space. Others proposed the hypothesis of contamination by unknown alloys. But the green glow remained unexplained. How could the light behave as if carbon was burning when there was no carbon? It was a paradox that contradicted all known laws of comet physics, unless the glow itself was chemical. If it was something else, a signal masquerading as light, then images appeared that completely shattered the model. The Mars Express and Trace Gas Orbiter both detected something no comet should produce: a stream of material heading towards the sun, not away from it. The front jet, dust models collapsed under the weight of the data. The structure of the jet was too narrow, the brightness gradient too steep, and the geometry too perfect. It seemed as if the object was pushing itself rather than responding to the sunlight. Yet, despite the visible gas emission, the trajectory of Tri-Eye Atlas remained unchanged. This path remained gravitationally perfect, showing no noticeable deviations from the predicted course. This meant one thing: whatever it threw off, it did not disrupt its balance. The object was too dense, too massive, Too stable. Calculations estimated its mass at over 10 billion tons, significantly exceeding that of any known comet and resembling a metallic asteroid. As data came in, the term natural object began to crumble. But what if Tri-Eye Atlas was not just dusting off? What if it had activated? When Tri-Eye Atlas disappeared behind Mars, a strange phenomenon engulfed the deep space communication network. Engineers monitoring communications with Martian orbiters began to detect interference. Rhythmic pulses, obscured in the signal. At first they assumed it was an echo caused by solar wind or a frequency overlap from the charged tail of a comet. However, the rhythm was too stable, too intentional. Every 22 seconds, a faint burst repeated on several channels, identical on both NASA and European Space Agency receivers. It wasn't strong enough to be considered a transmission, but it couldn't be called random either. The patterns seemed to reflect the orbital motion of a comet, as if the object was reacting to its own trajectory. And just as suddenly as it appeared, the disturbance vanished. Mission Control described this phenomenon as an electromagnetic resonance wave. Some referred to it as a humming, but those who listened to the filtered playback described something much more disturbing. A low-frequency mechanical vibration that seemed to accelerate slightly before abruptly transitioning into dead silence. At that moment, the James Webb Telescope, located millions of kilometers from Earth at Lagrange Point 2, directed its instruments towards the area of space from which the signal originated. When the first long exposures from the James Webb Telescope arrived, scientists expected the usual blurred image, perhaps a few faint traces of dust left by the comet. However, what they saw left even the most steadfast astronomers speechless. Infrared data showed 3 distinct heat signals instead of 1. The first was an elongated core, coinciding with the expected position of 3 Atlas eyes. The second and third were smaller and colder, positioned on either side of the main core at equal distances. They moved in perfect formation, slightly adjusting their positions according to Mars's magnetic field. The symmetry was abnormal, almost artificial. When the colored composites were drawn, faint arcs of ionized material appeared, connecting 3 points, threads that shimmered like electric currents. Invisible light emitted a faint green glow, but in the infrared range, objects pulsed bright red in precise synchronization with a frequency of 22 seconds, previously detected in radio data. No comet had ever displayed such behavior. For some, it looked like controlled stabilization. For others, like movement. Nevertheless, none of the objects seemed to be accelerating. They held their position as if orbiting something invisible. Webb's spectrograph soon revealed another mystery: the presence of pure nickel vapor, metallic atoms heated to extreme temperatures, existing in amounts far exceeding what any natural body could produce. Nickel, dense and non-deformable, should not evaporate so close to Mars, and yet his spectral line dominated the readings. Next to it were traces of cobalt and an unknown compound emitting weak but perfectly structured emission peaks, 2 of which were too uniform to be random. The data resembled a harmonic pattern of a technological process rather than a geological one. It seemed that the object was self-improving, reorganizing its surface composition under the warmth of the sun. Planetary geologists proposed bold hypotheses, from metallic crystallization to magnetic shielding. But no one could explain why the light of the 3 Atlas eyes modulated as it was aligned with the encoded data. The brightness of the object no longer remained constant. It began to blink like a lighthouse. When the intervals of these flashes were compared to the previously recorded electromagnetic hum during the flyby past Mars, the results matched perfectly. The pulses were not just energy, they carried information. As the James Webb Telescope continued to track the object, smaller companions, 2 faint signatures surrounding the main core, began to gradually move away. Slowly and deliberately, they aligned in the plane of the ecliptic, forming a straight line between Mars, the Sun, and the object's trajectory. This formation persisted for several hours before disappearing from sight. Astrophysicists called it a coincidence, a gravitational random coincidence, but the precision of the geometry was impossible to ignore. Each alignment matched the same pulse frequency, the same repeating modulation of light. It seemed that 3 ocular atlases synchronized with the architecture of the solar system. The green glow of the comet intensified, spreading in a narrow beam directed straight at the sun, while the threads connecting the companions shimmered one last time before disappearing. The data stream from James Webb unexpectedly cut off when solar interference peaked, and then silence reigned. For the first time in weeks, the sky darkened. There was no signal or light, only the memory of a perfect alignment and a troubling realization that everything 3 ocular atlases had done near Mars was just the beginning. The world waited. The instruments were silent. The forecasts cooled. The next day, the James Webb Telescope detected something, a faint pulse of infrared light emerging from the darkness. At first, it appeared as a simple flash, but within minutes it stabilized into a continuous signature, brighter and clearer than ever. The object had survived perihelion, but now it was different. This brightness no longer matched the usual curve of a comet's reflection. It intensified, emitting much more energy than it received. The spectral ratios had also changed. Once dominant lines of nickel were now complemented by new, unidentified radiations, narrow and perfectly arranged like harmonics from a vibrating string. The frequency matched the 20-second rhythm that had haunted every observation since passing Mars, but this time, something else was hidden beneath it. A secondary impulse, shorter, faster, and painfully familiar. When the engineers overlaid the new data on the previous signals, they realized it was an echo, a reflected version of the very transmissions Earth had been sending into space for decades. It seemed that 3 ocular atlases were listening and now responding. Shortly after the object's reappearance, radio stations worldwide began detecting interference at the hydrogen line, 1,420 megahertz, the same frequency used in the historic WOW signal of 1977. The impulse repeated at precise intervals, too deliberate to be ignored. When the data was decoded, its harmonic structure revealed a disturbing resemblance to a comet's orbit, a spiral drawn in binary, replicating its path around Mars. This was not just a random transmission. The object was sending its own story back to us. The discovery shocked the scientific community. The idea that an interstellar object could record, store, and retransmit electromagnetic information contradicted all known laws of physics. Nevertheless, the James Webb Telescope data confirmed the impossible. Light from the three-eyed atlas contained modulation signatures corresponding to encoded data, structured, ordered, and intentionally embedded in its infrared emissions. For several days, astronomers debated whether to send a response, but the ethical question divided the community. Was it a discovery or a test? The hum continued, steadily repeating the same signal as if waiting for confirmation. As the signal strengthened, the polarization sensors of the Webb telescope detected something even more alarming. The light from the three-eyed atlas was now polarized against the solar wind. Usually, particles from the sun scatter light chaotically, but in this case, the alignment was reversed, as if the object distorted photons to follow an invisible magnetic grid. The result was a beam of light that remained coherent over millions of kilometers, like a laser encompassing the solar system. Scientists tried to model the effect, but no simulation matched the observed accuracy. The polarization was not random. It rotated at fixed intervals, perfectly aligning with the rotation of Mars and the orbital position of Earth. The object seemed to synchronize itself with both planets, creating a resonance triangle in space. Amateur astronomers began to notice strange reflections in the night sky. Barely noticeable ripples of green light passed across the horizon each time the three-eyed atlas completed one of its polarization cycles. The effect was visible from both hemispheres, lasting seconds before fading away. For some, it looked like a beam of communication. For others, like a countdown. In a few hours, the impossible happened. The James Webb Telescope detected an unexpected acceleration of the three-eyed atlas, a deviation of less than 0.01% from its predicted course, which could not be explained by gravity or solar radiation. For the first time, the object moved under its own control. The acceleration was weak, gradual, and incredibly precise, like a ship correcting its trajectory. What made it even stranger was the direction. Instead of continuing its journey into interstellar space, the three-eyed atlas slightly curved inward, aligning its vector with Earth's orbital plane. The adjustment was microscopic but deliberate, and when it made this turn, the rhythmic signal also changed. The 20-second pulse began to slow down, 23 seconds, then 24, as if adjusting to the time dilation of Earth, correcting itself to the movement of our planet. The entire solar system seemed to pulse with this, resonating through electromagnetic fields, radio frequencies, and even seismic instruments. No one could explain how and why this was happening, but every system sensitive to electromagnetic fluctuations, from satellites to underground sensors, recorded the same pattern. The signal was no longer coming from space. It was passing through us. At first, it was barely noticeable. Slight changes in the upper layers of the atmosphere, faint flashes that could only be detected by high-altitude observatories. However, over the course of several days, This phenomenon became undeniable. A pulsating green aura appeared over regions where northern lights had never been seen. Equatorial zones, deserts, and temperate latitudes were bathed in spectral light that flickered every 24 seconds, matching the pulse of the comet, Three Eyes of Atlas. The air traffic control towers began reporting strange electromagnetic interference at the same intervals, and civilian communication satellites experienced brief but synchronous transmission failures. Each event perfectly coincided with the updated orbital position of the object. The light intensified from night to night, and when the scientists compared atmospheric data, they discovered something alarming. The light did not originate from the atmosphere. It was projected onto it, as if directly from space. High-precision telescopes tracking the source discovered that the beam was not coming from the sun or any known celestial reflection, but from a narrow cone of energy emitted directly from the comet, Three Eyes of Atlas, which was now perfectly aligned with Earth's magnetic equator. The comet was no longer just passing by. It was deliberately aimed at the planet with mathematical precision. Nations around the world silently mobilized. Observatories, defensive satellites, and radio telescopes were repurposed into a unified global network designed to monitor the comet, Three Eyes of Atlas. The object became too organized, too purposeful. But then a new anomaly arose that no one could explain. Electric cables, energy networks, and even underground servers began to emit a faint electromagnetic hum. It was not noise, but a structure repeating in harmonic sequences identical to those observed in the light of a comet. Devices across the planet began to involuntarily synchronize. Clocks fell into a perfect rhythm with a 24-second cycle. Even atomic clocks on GPS satellites, accurate to fractions of a microsecond, started ticking in unison with the pulsations.